Welcome back, my nomads. Welcome back to another Bitcast. I'm back here with Zach. What's going on, Zach?
Hey, baby girl, how you doing?
Chilling, man. I know we got a lot to talk about. Um, can I
Yeah,
start it off?
yeah, man, do your thing. Let's see what's up.
I just want to say, movies are too long. I
Yeah,
never
it's
thought
kind of
I would
weird how
say
we've
that.
gone that way.
I never thought I would say that.
Yeah.
Um, so I got back from vacation. You was on vacation too. And we back at it. So I was like, yo, I'm gonna watch Killers of the Flower Moon. So I go on my app. I'm like,
Oof.
look at the times. I'm like, okay, I can go with this and that. And I always check how long the movie is so I can prepare. I look, this movie is 3.5 hours long. And I'm like, nah, this is gonna be I love going to the theater, but this one's gonna be waiting for it to come on digital on Amazon to rent and splitting it into 2 days. I can't, bro. I can't, man. Like, that's a 4.5 hour commitment. Oh, you just cut out for a second. Your audio's out.
My bad. Jesus, I'm an idiot. No, we've already done it with a few movies this year, right? We've done it with Avatar,
And
Oppenheimer, and John Wick.
I've been nah, John Wick was like 245.
No, it
And
felt like three.
maybe it felt like three. But Oppenheimer was three.
Over
Avatar was
three.
probably the longest one, like
Three and a half, 3:45.
nah, it wasn't that long. It was like 315, 320.
See, here's the thing, like we still have the previews and everything.
And previews are back to being a half an hour before the movie.
Oh, dude, it's a 5 hour ordeal with the driving,
With the
with the
driving,
all
with
of it.
the like it your whole day's gone, basically. All of
Yes.
it. And
Yeah.
I'm like, nah, man. I mean, like a movies should be as long as they should be as long for, but
Mm,
basically like for example, you and I talked about Avatar back when it came out, the sequel, and we
yeah.
both agreed like, yo, they could have trimmed some of that stuff. Like
Yeah.
Wolf of Wall Street was like 3 hours, another Martin Scorsese and Leo DiCaprio movie, but it didn't feel like 3 hours.
Well, because everything had connecting dots, it made sense. Like you, in order for you to get to the next scene, the previous one had to happen. Avatar, I kind of felt like it was very episodic, chapter oriented, where they
Yeah,
could have brushed some, but it's an experience, right? So he knows the replayability of you watching at home is next to nil. Put as much as you can in the movie theater. I'm serious.
yeah, you're right. And Wolf of Wall Street, that movie was moving. Everything kept going. There was like it wasn't stopping, so it didn't feel like 3 hours. I feel like even though like um Black Panther Wakanda Forever was shorter than Wolf of Wall Street, it felt longer. And we talked about that too,
It
about
dragged.
how
Yeah.
it was such a heavy, emotionally heavy movie. It was
Mm-hmm.
like, man, like, come on, let's wrap this up. Like another scene where
Mm.
we're crying about the child. Like, no disrespect, but it was just like I'm not considered an emotional guy, so I'm like, bro, like, can we like I don't want to be sad for over 2.5 hours. I want to be entertained, but you got to be in the right headspace to rewatch that movie. And
I
I feel
agree.
like you got to earn 3 hours. I feel like Lord of the Rings earned the
Four
theatrical
hours and ten
versions.
minutes. Oh, okay. I was
The
about to say.
theatrical versions earned it, but I will say I recently last year saw the extended versions, which are like 4 hours apiece. I feel like they earned it. They
Yeah.
earned that 4 hours. Now I didn't watch it all in one sitting, but I feel like everything needed to be there.
You didn't do it in one sitting. See, remember when The Matrix come out? What was it last year?
Oh yeah, Matrix
And I watched all
4.
three of them just to get, catch up in one day. And you thought I was a lunatic, dude. That was tough.
Bro, you didn't after watching that movie, you were probably pissed. Like I did not need to do that, and it probably made the movie worse for you because you rewatched all of
Well, Neil Patrick Harris as a bad guy is what did it for me. But
them. And then basically, they couldn't get Hugo Weaving back, so they
Yeah,
just recast
because
him and they bring
was
back
he
Agent
be
Smith.
he
What?
was just busy. He was just busy, right? Not because he didn't want to.
I don't know, man. He might have looked at that script and was like, "Nah, like, come on, man. Like that that movie, bro. I try to pretend like it didn't exist. You know, 2 and 3 weren't the greatest, but they were way better than 4. Okay, I'll just say that.
3 was okay. It put a nice bow on it.
Yeah, and then they ruined it with 4. You know, I know one of the Wachowski siblings didn't return. The other one was like, "Look, they're gonna Warner Brothers is doing this with or without me. I'd rather them do it with me." And I felt better about the project because of that. And then it was like, really, bro? So everybody's back. So none of the sacrifices
Everyone's
mean
back, baby.
anything. And
Nothing. Everyone's back. Better than ever.
everybody's back. Like,
All
come
right.
on,
So
bro.
what do you do? Like we shorten it, then what? Because here, not that long ago, movies were an hour and a half, hour 45. And it just felt like it
Some
was
still are.
incomplete.
Nah, 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 nah. I mean, some are like that new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. That was great.
It was okay. But it was animated though.
Yeah, it was hour
That's
40. I
different.
mean, as opposed to
Now,
Across the Spider-Verse, which was like
which
2.5.
long. That was long.
But I felt like it earned it, but at the same time, I'm like, yo, I feel for those artists because that's it takes like 4 years to do an animated movie, a regular running animated movie, but they did one for an hour, I mean 2 hours and 40 minutes. That must have took them like so many late nights, and we heard about all the overworking, all everybody being overworked over there. And Seth Rogen said for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to overwork his people. So, but yeah, that's crazy. I mean, movies are as long as they should be, but some just overstay their welcome for me. Like if you don't have enough story, like for example, Ahsoka did not
Mhm.
need to be a TV show. That should have been a movie because they were there. If you watch all 6 of those episodes, there's not enough story. There's not enough going on for 6 hours, bro. Like it's like even the characters look bored to me, and I'm like, that's because nothing's going on. There's not enough story. There's not enough meat on the bone. It's a lot of fat. So they could have made it into like a 2 hour and 15 minute movie and called it a day, you know. But I know they said it was a hard sell because you had to have watched Rebels and all that other stuff to understand it. But even the show was a hard sell. A lot of people was like, "What's going on here?" Like Rebels was like how many years ago? Like 10 years ago, and this is a sequel to that. Like, what are we doing here? So it amazes me that I think it's getting a second season. Whatever, but a lot of these Disney Plus shows, Marvel and Disney both. I mean, Marvel and Star Wars both could have just been movies that were only on Disney Plus. I don't know, man. They don't know what they're doing. I heard a recent report about somebody at Disney who was working on something like a show was talking about how the problem is Disney doesn't hire showrunners. They're trying to make their shows like how they make their movies, and you can't do that with TV because TV is a whole different beast. Like with their movies, they shoot their movies, and then they have time set aside for reshoots. So they watch the movie they just did, and then they already have the time set for reshoots. Whereas with the shows, you can't do that with 6+ hours of TV. You just can't be like, oh, you're shooting for like what 6 months or whatever. You just can't go back.
Mhm.
So they need dedicated showrunners, and until they do that, I feel like their shows are just going to keep suffering like they have been because you just can't do that. Like you just can't have somebody write for 6 hours of television, and then you have a director that's going to direct every episode, and then put the writer out the door and then the director tries to put their vision, and then the producer in the edit tries to put their vision. So it's like getting mismatched at least three different times. Like you can't do that. So I don't know.
That's where we're
Hopefully,
at with that's where we at. We're inundated with so much content. You got to just whoever lasts the longest. And I feel like for long movies, they kind of need to do the WWE mentality, right? Like those shows are long. And you know what they do? Like when they kind of break it up, something immediately crazy happens to start the next chapter, so to speak. I feel
mm,
like for a long movie, in order for you to stay engaged, you need to have like you need to have an impact moment, that kind of sticks with you, and then you can kind of like draw it out again. You want to have it like kind of on like a roller coaster because these 3.5 hour movies that keep you flat lines and just like in a very, like in a very even keeled state, it doesn't stick with you, and there's very little incentive for you to watch it again.
um, now I'm gonna say something before I say it. I want everybody to know that I'm a Martin Scorsese fan. I always have been since I was a kid, But is this just an an older Martin Scorsese who refuses to change, or who's just become a curmudgeon about film? Because The Irishman was like what, 4 hours? I didn't see that movie, even though it was on streaming.
It was great. It
I didn't
fe-
see that
it
movie.
it it, it made sense. Like his movies make sense for why it's like that. Like once we watch it, we're like, okay, we see why, because he picks topics, dude, that no one really covers.
Right.
If you see a rendition of like a movie, it's like 2 hours long. How many different iterations have we seen that in the past, or a different type? Like he's very unique and original in his stuff. And I feel like you have to kind of do the story justice. Like what he's doing with this particular movie, how many people actually know what happened? Besides the people who are affected, like American Indians get knocked off the reservation. They
Not many
find oil
people.
companies are coming in and they're like, you know what? We need this. Let's just, find a way to scam you out of it and we can make a bunch of profit. Like this is never even covered in school. You know what I mean?
Well, well, two things. So if that's the case, then maybe in his older age he's making movies for streaming, even though I know he hates streaming. He loves the theater. Maybe
Right.
your movie should just be for streaming like you did for Netflix. And number two, um, someone I saw online point out that movies have always been long. Ben-Hur, um,
Yes.
what's it, Lawrence of Arabia,
Yes.
but
Dr. Zhivago.
they pointed out back then those movies had intermissions.
Yes.
So do we go down the if your movie hits a certain runtime, do we go the intermission route? And
I
if you
love that
have
idea.
intermissions, I love the idea, but if you have intermissions, no previews.
I
Zero.
love that idea.
Zero previews, and you have to have an intermission. Maybe you can have your
Or
in-house
just cut the
previews during the
or just
intermission.
pick your own previews. Like you have certain movies and you like, okay, yeah, let's do that. Like keep it to 10 minutes. So have like 3 or 4 previews, not 8 or 9
Maybe you can make your intermission have
previews.
play the previews of the in-house preview of that theater.
I
If
love
you're
that.
in AMC theater, play the AMC previews. Don't do all
Yeah, just
these
take like a nice little
trailers and
20,
shit.
25 minute intermission,
Yeah.
break it up, go get a snack, use the restroom. I'm cool with that.
And you know what that's going to do? That's going to make all the studios crack down on these directors and these runtimes, because previews are how the studios sell their movies.
You should earn that right. Scorsese has earned the right to do that. So it's
I
not like
agree.
everyone can do that.
I agree. If you earn that right, so be it. And if you're a studio and you do go down the route we just said, you know, be picky and choosy about who you give those runtimes to, and cracking down on those previews.
That's the
So
kind
you
of
and
movie
I
you go
saw.
to those movie tavern places where you eat dinner and all that. Like that'd be a
Oh
perfect movie
yeah,
to do
you
that.
make a day out of it. I would do that for sure. But I don't know,
Mel
man.
Gibson
These,
movies are like that too. You know, they're
yeah,
long.
yeah. I mean, I
Apocalypto,
feel
that was
like
long.
the movies I've seen from him, I feel like they earned that runtime. There's some movies
He's
out
great.
there that I've seen that I'm like, you have not earned this runtime. And then there's some movies that are so long, I'm like, yo, I wanted more, even though it was like 3 hours. Like Lord of the Rings was 4 hours a piece, and I'm like, yo, that was great. Let's go. Let's go for more.
Director's cuts, like, man, how do you fit all that content in there? Like, when you're doing something like that, when you're releasing the theatrical version, how do you choose what to cut?
I mean, director's cut. This is a good segue into another thing. Best Buy is getting rid of physical media. No more DVDs and Blu-rays at
I
Best
love
Buy.
it.
But what does it say about ownership in media? You
We've
know,
talked about this.
yes.
Ownership is a very how many devices can you play on these things that are not connected to the internet just because you have a physical copy? If you're connected to a internet connected device, it'll just prevent you from doing it.
But if you're like me, who has a device that can play 4K Blu-rays that's not connected to the internet,
Yeah,
you're
but that's like a
golden.
VCR. How many people have that? You know what I mean?
I do. I have to.
Oh, I know you do, but truly, like, no, I'm talking about mainstream. How many people have that?
Yeah, no, I mean, for people like that, I'm like, you get what you get. You wanted this digital stuff. A lot of people were clamoring for this. And now, Zach, now people are getting pissed off. The same people who were complaining and wanting digital, now people are like, more physical media because all these streaming platforms have doubled their prices recently. Netflix, Disney Plus, and Apple TV have
I
doubled their
know.
prices.
I canceled. I
And then they're
canceled all of it.
canceling physical media. So now you don't own anything. And the only way you can get this content is through them. So now people are crying about it. And I'm like,
Dude,
what did you
subscription
think was gonna
services have
happen?
always been like that. Like it
Exactly.
started, it's like with Microsoft Word, how many people would want to pay the lifetime membership of $300 but break it up for $20 a month? You see $20, but that stuff adds up. You see the $20 a month, you're like, okay, I can handle that. But I'm like, yeah, within a year, you could have paid for the lifetime and you would have been fine with the product license. Now you're stuck, and it's access. You're paying for access no matter what, and that's the pricing model of where we've kind of gone as a society with everything. I mean, you could even get a car. You don't even need to get an ownership for a car. You just pay a monthly service to have cars too. Like Audi has that,
Oh
where you could pick so many models and it doesn't
yeah.
hurt your credit as long as you have the income and stuff. You could get these models with this much a month, and it's like our generation doesn't have an understanding of what ownership is.
Yeah. And they never will with this. I mean,
Oh,
I've canceled both Netflix and Disney Plus because I'm not for it. So I just
I've done both of that. I've gotten rid of I've also got rid of Max.
oh yeah,
The
and
only
Apple TV Plus, I got rid of that.
Because Max was going up too. Like I got an email, it was like, "Oh,
Oh
your
yeah.
plan's going to stay the same, but now you don't have 4K, and now
Yeah.
you have one less device." I'm like,
Yeah.
instead, I told you I got one of the online TV things with Apollo, and it's like,
You know
hey,
that Max, there's a report that Max used fake accounts back when it was HBO Max to boost their numbers. So I'm like, so all these people, so we don't know how many subscribers each of these platforms have. Maybe that's why they keep increasing prices because people are just getting off the rat race and doing stuff like you're doing, Fire Sticks, Apollo TV, or there's a thing where people are stream hopping, where you pay $15 for one streaming service for that month and you just watch whatever you want to watch. Then you go
and then
to the
just get
next
rid
one.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's what I did for Netflix, and only reason why I kept Netflix because The Witcher. But I was like, for Disney,
Mm.
for for Disney, for HBO Max, for Netflix, for all of them combined, you're paying like I was paying $130 for all of it. I kept Apple because I have an iPhone and that's with my music and with my cloud service, and it's a negligible amount. It's like $20 a month for me and the
Wait,
family, so it makes sense.
you don't get it for free? I thought Apple TV Plus comes for free with
It comes
what
with
you
the
have.
package with my music. Yeah, yeah, it's part of the bundle, so that's why
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
get rid of it.
Oh, okay.
Because I need my cloud services and stuff, right? So
All right. All
it's
right.
$20 a month for everything. It's not a big deal. I have it for music. But
Yeah.
everything else, I'm like, I was talking to Heather about. I was like, hey, like, there's no need for us to really have this. Plus, we have YouTube. I'm keeping YouTube for right now just because I paid for the Sunday ticket before I moved over to Apollo. But once my Sunday ticket subscription's up, right, I'm getting rid of YouTube TV as well, and I'll just
Might
stick
as
with
well.
Apollo
Honestly, I only use YouTube TV for football. That's it. And then I get
Me
rid
too.
of it. And now Max,
And World
which I
Series.
get for free through my telephone provider, which is why I have Max, is playing NBA games. So I can just get rid of YouTube TV and watch NBA games on Max when the football season's over. So,
Is it funny we've gone full circle, cable cutting for all of this?
and now we're going back to, well, most people are going back to cable. And I'm like, with all the free stuff like Freevee, Pluto, and stuff like that, you don't need to pay subscriptions for anything. You're good. Like you get all this
Oh,
free
I kept
content.
Amazon because I like buying
Well,
stuff on
Amazon
Amazon.
is it comes with the Prime.
I think that's probably the best deal.
It is the best deal. And I don't know why Apple, well, it sounds like Apple TV
Apple
for
does do
Apple
the same
users,
thing for Apple users, yes.
yeah,
But
it
if you're not
doesn't
an Apple
it hasn't
user, it doesn't
increased the
make
price.
sense. But
Yeah.
I mean, Apple, I mean, think of it. Apple and Amazon are the two largest companies in the world, right? Um, it makes sense. They can undercut everyone. They can survive because that's not their main focus of profit. That's just a side thing.
I agree, which is why I don't understand for non-Apple users why Apple TV Plus doubled their prices. I don't understand that. Because their price point was perfect. I don't understand. Like it's not like they need the money. I don't get it.
Now
Maybe
they're worth
because
like
they're
$4 trillion.
maybe it's because they're putting more money in their TV shows, it looks like. Because
Yeah,
their shows look prime.
it's margins.
Their shows look prime. But at the same time, Amazon puts a lot of money in their shows too, so I don't understand. I don't know. I don't get it. I don't feel like Apple needed to double their prices.
No, they don't need to, and it's just I
It's
think there's going to
excessive.
be. I think they want to see how many people who have Apple TV are non-Apple users. I think it's a negligible amount. Let's be
Oh,
real.
okay. Yeah, yeah. Even there's a lot of Apple TV. There's a lot of people with Apple who I know who don't even watch Apple TV Plus and don't even know they have it. I'm like, bro,
Yeah,
you have the
if you
whole
pay for the
thing.
music in the cloud, you have it.
I'm
Like,
like, you have it. Watch the show. They're like, oh, really? I'm like, how do you not know this? Like, it's part of your service. You've been an Apple guy for like 20 years. What are you talking about? This is part of it.
they don't
They
do a
don't
good
even know.
job. They don't do a good job like relaying that to customers, though.
That's
I
true.
can tell you that for a fact. Like,
That's
I didn't
true.
even know that. Like the service that I have, which is my music, my service, my arcade stuff that I never use. Excuse me, it's like $22 with the family thing a month. Like,
That's worth it.
100% because it's like I need my cloud service. Like that's like where
That's
all of my stuff's at. Like that's important. My
that's worth
music,
it.
my streaming, the streaming alone for the music's $15 a month. I'm like, for an extra seven, I get Apple TV, and I get my cloud service of like 200 gigs. I need that. Let's do it.
Honestly, like, um, if I wanted to get rid of Spotify, which I won't because I get Hulu for free through Spotify. If I wanted to get rid of that, I could just do um uh Amazon Music and have my TV, my Prime, my everything
Yeah,
through Amazon, like how you have Apple, and it would just be a negligible amount because it's included with Prime.
yeah, exactly.
So I don't know, man. Like, if you're gonna do the streaming thing, you should just be smart about it. Like, I get Max and Hulu for free through other providers, and Amazon Prime is free through Prime, and then they also have Freevee, which is owned by Amazon, which has free streaming for everybody and
I like
stuff.
Freevee.
Freevee has a lot of good stuff, man. But I don't know, man. It's just crazy. Um, I do want to say RIP. I know we're late, but RIP to Richard Roundtree, Shaft himself, the Black James Bond. We got to say RIP to him. I heard about it
A
when
lot
I
of
was
people,
on
a lot of people died this Suzanne Summers.
Oh yeah.
Dude, like this is not.
This is crazy. It's crazy. Like it's like all of our icons that we grew up with are passing away. And it's kind of weird because you feel mortality now. Like when you were younger, I don't know about you, but you feel like I felt like I was immortal. And now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, my knees don't work the way they Same with
Yeah, you
these.
start having health issues. You start
My
seeing people
back don't
our
feel the
age
same
start
way,
having problems. It's like, oh
And
man,
then you
like
see some of the people we grew up with who had six packs, and now they look like they age like milk. You're like, oh damn, like, you didn't age well at all. you know,
it's I
you're like,
look the
oh.
same, but I'm just way thicker. I'm fat. I just, I try, but it doesn't work out too well.
I mean, life happens. You got a family and stuff like that. It's hard to get in the gym. Like me, I've been at home all week because my daughter's sick, and it's like, I'm like, man, I know some people are going to be mad at me for saying this, but I'm like, yo, men aren't built for this, man. Like, women can do that. I'm like, I'm going crazy in the house. I'm like, yo, I gotta get out of here. I need to do some work. Like I brought my laptop on vacation to do work, and now I can't do any work because she's older. She doesn't sleep as much, so it's like I gotta entertain
I
her and
just
stuff.
nah, just
She's
feed her
sick.
Benadryl. I'm telling you, just pop her some Benadryl,
Yeah, okay.
and
Yeah, okay.
I think you'll be all right. But
You can't do that
so
stuff anymore.
so
My
there was
parents
one
did.
movie I wanted to talk to you about one movie before we started talking about the one we agreed to do some coverage on.
Hmm.
And I've been on a sci-fi dystopic kick the last 2 days
It's the
where I'm
best.
just scrolling through random movies on Apollo that I've never even heard of. Like when I was talking to you about the what was the one that you did color theory on? What's the name of it?
Captive State.
Captive State. I've never even heard of this movie
I
ever.
saw it in theaters with my wife when it came out.
I'm like, what the heck? How did I miss a John Goodman and Jonathan Majors movie?
Yeah, man.
And I'm like, I'm going through all of this. Like Kyle Farrell had some after Yang. I was like, man, what the heck is this? What are all these movies? So I watched them just to, I watched A Quiet Place 2.
I
Very
still
well
gotta
done.
watch that. Still got.
It's very well done. It's Cillian Murphy's in it. He's interesting.
Yeah, he's interesting.
No, it's just like these movies that I mean, I feel like during the pandemic, when everything was shut down, you had all this content out or coming out, or it was around that time, we just kind of like lost track. It was just such a blur. Like, oh man,
That's because there was like two camps of people. One camp watched all the stuff that was released during the pandemic, and another camp just watched all the old stuff they used to watch to make themselves feel good. Because it was a depressing time, so people needed to watch like The Office and stuff like that. I tried to do both, but it kind of like burned my brain, and by the end, I was just watching like Parks and Rec and The Office and
I'm
Scrubs.
glad I was working for 99% of it. So, didn't
Yeah,
have a
same,
didn't
same.
have like
Oh, yeah, it was work was the worst. I know some people are like, oh, you at least you had a job. Man, the people who did have jobs during the pandemic, we were thrown on the coals, man. We were run through the fire, man. It was crazy, man. It was wild. And I graduated during the pandemic, and I couldn't do anything in my field because everything shut down. So I had to stay at my crappy job, and it was the
yeah, I
worst.
know. So anyway, I wanted you to talk to you about this real fast. And
Mhm.
I feel like the aliens in that movie, it's kind of like what Shyamalan did in Signs, where he just let's just flash them. Let's not make them they're the central focus part of the movie based on them moving the plot, but let's not make it about them. Does that make sense? And
Yes.
whoever, I don't know who did that, but they did a fantastic job making it about the human element versus the alien element.
So it was directed by Rupert Wyatt, who's famously known for directing the first Planet of the Apes reboot, Rise of the Planet of the Apes in what, 2011? And
New
then
one's coming out too.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Trailer was released today. I gotta check that out
All
when
that.
we when
It
we're
was good.
done. But yeah, he did that. Excuse me, he did that one.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was. I remember it fondly. Like it was a great movie, and I remember coming out the theater, and me and my wife was like, "Yo, that was great," and nobody's talking about it. Like, what's going on? This came out in
They lost
2019.
they lost money, I think, at the box office for it.
Probably. And I'm wondering if this movie came out at the same time as a bunch of bigger movies.
Avengers.
Oh, oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's probably why.
That was the I mean, Endgame was the largest movie spectacle like in our lifetime in terms of like hype. Let's be real.
Yeah. And this came out March 2019, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
mean, when you had Avengers with all that hype and buildup, right? Like, which is part of the reason why Marvel's not doing so well now, because you kind of shot all its shot, like in terms of that buildup, and now you're like at the low of your high, and you're like, it doesn't feel really interesting for me to get high again.
well, the problem with Marvel is the Endgame ended the story they were telling for what, 10 years. And then they continued
Longer.
to tell stories, but didn't
Yeah,
know where they were going. They should have let
they're
it
all over the
end.
place.
Yeah, they should have let it end everything, shut it down for like 2 or 3 years, let us miss it, and then come back after you
And
figured
start
out what
doing the
story
new
you wanted to
stuff
tell.
because
Yeah,
it was all over the place, and you're like, okay, so who's the actual bad guy?
yeah,
And the fact that you had to bring up like Kang the way they did, was like,
yeah. It's
what they
literally
should
like, oh, the
what they
new
should have
Thanos is
done
Kang, and he. The thing about him is he dies in every movie, but he just keeps coming back. He's like a cockroach,
what
man.
they
It's
should have
like,
done with Kang, right, is kind of preface him in the last Avengers movie and end games like, no, this is the next Mac Daddy type of thing, right? No,
yes,
seriously, like kind of had
yes,
him like he was the one pulling the strings to get them all together, like in whatever way, because
oh yes.
that's what the comic books do with all the different series of the Avengers, right? Like they're spread out. You had the Secret Wars, which is the Kang saga. You have the Infinity Wars, which is Thanos saga, but there's always a bigger fish, and there is after Kang, right? You got the Living Tribunal, you have all this other stuff, right? So if there's something bigger, don't make seem Thanos is such this apex predator to where it's unstoppable. Because damn well within a couple years, you're introducing someone who could just snap his fingers and destroy him. Let's be real.
Hmm.
And I don't think they did a good job really sizing him up the way that they should have. And that's why there's no I know I'm digressing from what I was talking about, but movies like this is not made anymore. Like it's an
Nope.
original single, just a really enjoyable movie.
But I will argue that uh the creator is like this, right? A one-off
I was
movie,
going to say that he is.
original IP sci-fi. And like
Yes.
it's something that's going to lose money too. People didn't really go to see the creator, you know.
Um,
No one's
that
really
was Dennis
talking about him.
Villeneuve, right?
No, no, no. The creator is
Was
our
Gareth
Rogue
was
One.
Gareth
Yeah, Gareth
Gareth
Edwards.
whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, both those
Edwards.
guys, both of them kind of make movies the same way. And this guy that you just said, you said something Wyatt, you said?
Rupert Wyatt, who made
River
Captive
Wyatt.
State.
They make movies very similarly, and there's like a kind of a formula that works.
Yeah.
It's like a Sundance vibe without being Sundance. I like it.
It reminds you of District 9, you know.
Oh, dude, that's one of my favorite movies.
All three of these movies that we're talking about have a sci-fi element, but they were filmed like they were indie films. They were big blockbusters that
But
came out and were
District
filmed.
9 did not have a budget of indie film. That thing had a huge budget.
Not as big as you would think. It still had a fairly small budget,
That was
but
like 80 mil.
80 mil for
Yeah,
District 9,
I think so. I thought it
that
was
is not a big
like that.
budget, bro. Because the creator had
Dude,
a 80 mil.
yeah, but District 9 came out 10 years ago.
That's true. We can account to inflation, so that might be like what, 130 mil? That's
That's
still
a
not
lot
a
of money,
lot.
dude. I mean, how many movies actually make 130?
But most movies of that caliber now are IP driven, like Marvel, DC, and they're like 200,
Yeah, they're
250 mil.
franchises. Yeah, but because they have a base that's following it. Not everyone's got a base. Like you take a big gamble introducing a standalone IP every time you do it. You know
But
this.
that's the thing. These standalone IPs that we just talked about, they don't get a lot of money. 80 mil is not a lot, whether it's 10 years ago or today, it's not a lot for
I
a
feel like it
sci-fi
is.
movie of
Maybe
that
it's not.
caliber.
Maybe it's not. But I feel like if you have 80 mil, you got a lot of work you have to do just to make up for that.
Yeah, 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 definitely. I mean, you and with these movies, you have to put it on the screen, right? And the thing about especially Captive State, I think the thing that drew Captive State back was that it didn't really put the 80 million on the screen, right? It didn't really have like a trailer type of like blockbuster driven trailer for it because it was such a thriller. Even though it was a sci-fi, it was such a thriller about like Captive State is about the psychological um turmoil that you go through in a spy driven war, like a cold war. Because
Yeah,
they're not shooting on the streets in Captive State. It's all espionage, it's all hearsay, it's really spy driven. So there wasn't too much like you don't really see movies like Captive State in sci-fi settings. You see them in like
no,
war
no,
settings,
no.
you know, like Body of Lies with Leo DiCaprio and Ridley
Oh,
Scott. Great movie. That's basically
great.
what Captive State is with aliens, you know. And like you said, they didn't really show the
District
aliens.
9, by the way's production was only 30 mil and it grossed 210.
Are you kidding me? 30 mil.
No, I thought it was higher than that.
30 mil. That's got to be a
But you
typo.
look at Elysium, 115 mil for
Elysium. That's another
production.
one that's like this too. Elysium. Yeah, I enjoyed
How
that
much
too.
money did it make? That's the thing.
It didn't
Let me
make a
look.
lot. It didn't make a lot. I'm gonna look that up too. District 9 movie budget because it's like
286.
it made 286, so it made its money back. Well,
A little more.
for the most part, because I don't think when they talk about budget, I don't think they talk about how much they spent on marketing.
I Google total budget, which is production and marketing.
Oh, okay. So it made
You
its
have
money
to
back.
spend a lot of money in marketing just to
Yeah,
just to make these, because like look, these movies by itself, like they're one standalone movies, not part of a franchise, not part of an overarching storyline, right? And you're like, dang, if you double your production, like that's good.
yeah, yeah, man. Neil Blanca, excuse me. And it's funny that a lot of these
He
directors that
does
we're
good
talking
stuff
about,
too. I love his stuff.
a lot of these directors that we're talking about are English indie directors who just know how to
Mm-hmm.
tell stories, and then they get a shot and they knock these shots out the park. They're like, "Oh, we're going to give you a little bit of a budget and tell what story you want to tell." And they tell these like sci-fi driven, like Gareth Edwards, who did The Creator. His first big movie was Godzilla 2014, and they made their money back. You know,
I
a
mean,
lot
it's
of.
like Gran Turismo too, right? Speaking of Neil,
Mhm.
um, 60 mil for a budget, 119 gross.
Yeah, man. I heard that movie was great. I didn't get to see it because of my scheduling,
I'm gonna
but
go see it. I'm
it
gonna
was.
watch it at some point.
Yeah, I'm a fan of his. If you well, you probably don't have Netflix, but his company has a series of shorts on
Tell me
Netflix.
what it is. I'll watch it. It's on Apollo, dude. You search everything, I can watch it.
I forgot what it's called. I gotta look it up. Neil
You
Blomkamp's
said it's
studio.
under Netflix shows. I can. There's a
hmm
channel on Apollo for Netflix shows. I'll just go through it and look for it.
I'm literally gonna type in Netflix show for him because yeah, his Netflix series because I still gotta finish it. But oh yeah, Oats Studio, like oats for oatmeal. Oat Studios, if you look it up, they're like a series of sci-fi shorts that him and his company do, and they have like high profile people in them, like high actors like Sigourney Weaver and Dakota Fanning. Um, like I haven't seen them all, but they're great. I do believe some of them are on Netflix. I mean, YouTube too. So check it out. But yeah, man, we should get into the meat and potatoes, man.
I
No
was excited
piercer.
for this because when you asked me weeks ago what we are going to do, we kind of went back and forth. I'm like, let's talk about a movie that anytime I've talked about it has always been as a joke. All
No
right. If
piercer.
anyone hasn't seen Snowpiercer, I'll tell you what, these are one of those movies where the budget's like, okay, it's like it's not very much, right? It's like I
Mhm.
think it was 40 last time I checked, but it's one of those cult classics where I think you appreciate it more when it's been out for a little bit and you watch it. And that seems to be the case with me because most of the money that it came from was international, not domestic.
40 mil. It remains one of the most expensive. It remains, yeah, one of the most expensive South Korean productions ever. It was
You
a
could tell South
collaboration,
Korean, yeah.
yeah, a collaboration with South Korea and the Weinstein Company. And I remember reading about how the director was dealing with so much crap with Harvey Weinstein. It was like an ongoing battle between the two of them, fighting about what the movie was going to be. And ultimately, the director won most of it. He got what he wanted for the most part, and I'm glad because this movie, it's great.
It is good because the director, his name is Bong Joon-ho. If you guys haven't seen The Parasite, I suggest you watch it. Good movie. Um, but he does movies like this, right? Just end of world stuff. Does a good job. One thing about Snowpiercer that look, the lines are cheesy, everyone knows it, but man, there's a lot of people in it.
It's based off of a French comic book that he read on one of his productions and decided to make a movie out of it. And it's great. I mean, the movie has so much to say about classism, about society, and stuff like that.
Climate, climate
Climate,
change, all that stuff, right? But it's mostly about classism as a whole. It's not a race element. It's all because you got to think of it, right? Like if you're coming Korean point of view, you don't have race as the same issue as race in other places. The unequal distribution of wealth between the rich and the poor is so much greater, i.e., Squid Games, which is that's the main motif with like movies, right? And
right?
if you guys haven't seen it, it's pretty much based on the poor lives on there's this train that supposedly holds the rest of humanity because climate change like pretty much froze the earth over and they
Well,
live on the
there was a problem. I think it was disease, and then the humans shot off a chemical or something in the atmosphere that
to
froze.
control to lower the temperature of the earth,
Yes, yes.
and then it kind of cascaded it. Didn't work out.
Yeah, it didn't
But
really work out for them.
anyway, poor people live on the back of the train, all right, and they devise a way to get back at the rich who live on the front of the train. And I'll have you kind of take the symbolism and the cinematography, which I think is the highlight of this movie.
I mean, yo, I talk a lot of crap about Netflix, right? But Netflix is what introduced me into this movie when I first started using Netflix. And Netflix introduced me into foreign film as a whole. You know,
Yeah,
this is one of the first foreign films well, not foreign film. It's not technically a foreign film, but I started watching more foreign films after this.
it pretty much is foreign. It just because not everyone acting is foreign doesn't mean anything. Like the production crew is as foreign as it gets.
Yes, I agree. And you know what? Also because of the storytelling is foreign.
Yes,
I mean, it's based off of a French comic book, and the movie is directed by a Korean storyteller. You know,
yes.
and you kind of see it because I have in my notes here. I was thinking, I know I'm going to jump ship here, but I'm thinking of the end where he gets to the end of the train, and him and I forgot the guy's name, but the Korean guy, they sit down and they have a conversation. And he calls him like this tail hick, like, he calls him this slang for being poor. And then Chris Evans is just like, you know what? You know what happened back there? You know what happened when we boarded the train? And he tells him the story about how the rich forced them to become cannibals, basically. And
Oh yeah, he was eating a baby's arm.
he taught like this whole movie, and I think it's funny that they cast Chris Evans, right? Because he's already Captain America at this point. He's played him in a few movies. They already had two Avengers movies at this point, and oh no, they had one, and they're filming the second one because the second one came out in 2014. But he's already Captain America. He's been in a couple movies, and the director he didn't want to cast Chris Evans because he was like, "Yo, he's way too buff. Like, he looks too heroic. If you're on a train and you're starving, you're not going to look this good." So him and the cinematographer worked out a way to make Chris Evans through focal lengths and lenses and through the costume department to make him look small.
Yeah, he's a small dude. He looks like how Captain America was before the super soldier serum. Big
So
head, no body.
yeah, they put him in a bunch of clothes to hide his physique, and they also shot him in narrower lenses to look
Because he's
smaller.
ripped as hell
Yeah,
at this point.
because he's still ripped as hell. He just finished shooting the first Avengers when he was shooting this. He was growing his beard for the after credit scene that they did. That's why he's not showing his face in that scene. But yeah, he's doing this speech, and I'm like, yo, he gives the reveal of like, oh yeah, I was that guy who did that. And you realize why this character since the beginning of the movie did not want to be the leader, did not want to be called a leader, didn't want anybody to look up to him. And I'm just like, wow. Like I'm like these two foreign storytellers, the guy who did the comic book and the Korean director. I'm like foreign storytelling goes where
Bong. His
Americans
name's Bong.
bong.
Doesn't
Foreign
matter.
foreign storytellers go where American storytellers won't. Because
Yeah,
I'm like I don't think an American film would have a protagonist so flawed like this. Yeah, we have all these anti-hero movies coming out nowadays, but
good point.
they're all still kind of the same. They still don't cross a certain line. Whereas we have Curtis in this movie, the guy who we've been following since day one, who everybody keeps telling, you need to lead us. You are the leader. Bro, he was a cannibal eating babies. And it's crazy. Like when he reveals it, he's talking and he's telling you this, all the stuff he did, and then all of a sudden he starts to cry. He's like, "I know that babies taste better than adults," and I'm like, "Holy, like what?" Like that reveal was crazy. The line how he just delivered it, and I'm like, "You're like what?" And then he goes to explain to you that the kid that was his second in command he was going to kill that kid when he was a baby. He killed his mother and he was about to eat the baby until a man stopped him and cut off his arm, said, "You guys eat this instead," and took the baby away. Like, that's crazy. That, like, I don't know if a mainstream movie has a protagonist like that. Even with the Wolverine, right? Wolverine has done crazy things in the comics and was not necessarily a good guy. And in the 20th Century Fox movies, they turn him into like this upstanding hero with some grit. That's it. I mean, he was in how many PG-13s before he got to Logan, where it was rated R? So I'm like, wow. Like, this is why you watch foreign films. This is why, if you want to get into this business, you don't sit there and just watch only American films because you won't learn that much about storytelling. You got to watch some foreign stuff. And that's why I suggested like The Prophet to you, because it's like, wow, like that whole scene, and there's no music. They're just delivering the lines.
Oh yeah, there is no music in that whole entire movie. Ed Harris
Yeah.
though, as the main bad guy, was like,
Yes,
we have these planned these planned killings. If it gets too much, like we just we provoke them and there's a revolt and we just, we kill a percentage of the people. Yeah, we get collateral damage where people in front of the train, there was more, they shouldn't have died. But, as a whole, it's a job well done. It's successful.
bro. And Ed Harris, the whole time he's talking, it's just like a matter of fact to him.
Yeah.
He's just like, like there's
And
no
then he's like, hey,
emotion.
take my place. The fact that he asked him to take his place, I'm like, where is he getting this from?
I know. Like it's crazy. Like Chris Evans in that speech says, like, "Yo, I've hated Wilford for 18 years. Like, open the door so I can finish this." Like a guy who who we don't know who he was before the train, but basically was turned into a cannibal and was treated like crap for 18 years of his life. He's like, yo, just open this. And the fact that Ed Harris, because he's lonely, because he's been doing the same thing for so long, he doesn't have the social like intelligence to realize, oh yeah, I'm talking matter of factly about killing people and manipulating them, but I know I got this guy in the bag. It's like, no, man, this guy's hated you for 18 years. Like, you ruined his life. You ruined everybody's life. All his friends are dead. Like, literally everybody he knows is dead after this, basically.
You know what's my favorite scene? It's probably everyone's favorite scene is when the train starts turning on the track and they
Mhm.
start shooting through the window at each other. I'm like, this is the most insane thing I've ever seen in my life.
This is the second time no, third time I've seen this movie. I've seen it a long time ago before this last time. And I kept saying to myself, when is this scene coming up? When is the scene where the train is on a curve and they're shooting at each other? Like, it's wild, right? Like,
And none of the bullets hit them. It's all
nah.
frozen in the window.
It's all like machismo, like, yo, bro, let's go. Like, bah, 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 bah. And they're just staring at each other like, come hit me. What's up? Like, you want to go? Like, come on. Like, it's crazy. And this one guy would not die. That one,
No, he got stabbed in the back, literally.
nah.
He got stabbed, and he kept fighting people after getting stabbed. I'm like, yo,
Yeah.
he's not in a good place to get stabbed. And then when Ed Harris and Chris Evans was talking, he like wakes up. I'm like, yo, I thought this guy died. What the heck? How's
I
he
know.
got back?
Everybody's like, yo, he's alive? What the hell, man?
And then
Uh,
here's a twist at the end: the Earth isn't as inhabitable as they thought it was.
yes. That's, and it's funny that, I forgot his name, but the
They're just
guy,
in a cold part of the Earth where they could just go back to
yeah,
living their normal lives.
the Korean guy, he's points out why he's acting the way he is, why he keeps looking out the window, and you're like, oh snap. So does anybody else notice but him? Like, does Wilford know like they can live on Earth?
I
Do
think they can, and that's what, but they live in
they
a better
choose?
place. Yeah,
Yeah, they
on the
choose.
train.
And it's like, I love that line when Chris Evans is sitting listening to Ed Harris, and Ed Harris says like something like everybody has their own place where they're supposed to be, and then Chris Evans says only the people who are in the good place say that to the people who are in the bad place or something like that. And I'm like, I love that line. I love that line because how many times do you see that in movies where the person who wants to be where they are is like, you know what? I'm supposed to be here and you're supposed to be down there. Kind of like the Count of Monte Cristo, where the whole reason Guy Pearce hated his friend is because he was intelligent and he was supposed to be a peasant according to him and everything,
He
but
got a smoke show lady, and
exactly. He had the chick that he wanted. He had the job that he wanted. It's like I always tell people, it's like, you made it. It's great, but just watch yourself because there's always going to be somebody looking at your plate, even though they got a full plate in front of them, man. So just be careful about who smiles and says they're your friend sometimes. You know what I'm saying? And that could be at any like point in life, whether you're like making a lot of money or you're just not exactly where you want to be. There's always somebody looking at your play like, yo, I don't think you should have that. I should have that. So it was crazy. I love that line. He's like, yo, only people who are where you're at say that to people where
have
I'm
you
at.
ever
Like,
watched the show?
no, no, I haven't seen the show. I never really saw the show because I was like, I kind of really like the movie. I don't think I need to see the show. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
if
feel the same way.
I don't know if this needs a show. You know, the show has a lot of good reviews. It's produced by the director Boon Joon Ho. But
Bong.
Bong Joon Ho, you know. But yeah, I don't feel a need to see it. I don't know. But maybe
We
I'll
need some
I'll
more
check it
stuff
out.
from our boy Bong.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, he does good stuff. Like
he
this
does
isn't
good
the only
stuff.
movie. Yeah,
I mean, people after Squid Game, people were like, "Yo, Korean stuff is great." I'm like, I
this
been knew
guy,
that Korean stuff was
yeah,
great.
absolutely. It's
Snowpiercer,
because
Train
it's
to Busan, like, come on, bro, like, wake up, stop watching only American films. Like, there's a lot of great stuff out there, But what do you think of Tilda Swinton in this movie? a part that was originally meant for a man. The director wanted John C. Riley to be Mason,
What?
but after
I
Tilda
can't see
Swinton,
that.
after Swinton was cast, he rewrote the part, but he still kept some masculine things in there, like her name is Mason.
You know
People
what she
call her
reminds me
sir.
of? She reminds me of the chick from Dodgeball.
Yeah, I see that.
Olga?
Yeah, I remember that. Lady in Red. Every time we saw the chick play, I love that movie. But yeah, yeah, that was supposed to be for John C. Riley, and she got
John
the
C.
part instead.
Riley. See, here's the thing. Like a part like that's got to be like the main person in Hunger Games. That's like was it Elizabeth
Oh
Banks'
yeah,
character
yep.
who like is like or kind of like narrating, hosting the whole game. You need someone who is theatrical and off the train like that. She did a good job.
Yeah, she did a great job. Um, and I think I love that scene when she introduces them to sushi, and then she's about to eat hers, and Chris Evans is like, "Nope, you eat this brick, this protein brick,
Oh,
and
the
you enjoy."
insect thing.
Yeah, I thought that was fun, and the whole scene. I mean, the whole movie. He's just like having her on a leash, and then he's finally one at 1 minute. He's just like, "All right, I'm done with you." Bow, just like, takes her out. I'm like, yo, she deserved that. That whole movie. You're like, yo, when is she gonna get that bullet? She
What do
deserved.
you what do you think of the you can tell like it's differently just made differently just because of the feel like
Oh yeah.
the writing, the acting almost feels disingenuous sometimes, but I know that's just the tone of how they are.
Hmm.
And I feel like how can we incorporate like really good acting into these kind of movies, like the way that Americans do it or English or whatever?
It's funny that you say that because what you just said is the same complaint people had about Parasite, right? About
Yeah, I love Parasite, but I overlooked it with the fact that everything else was just so well done.
like the way that people acted was like disingenuous and stuff like that. You can kind of say the same thing about Squid Game. Maybe that's just a cultural thing, maybe that's just the Korean writing and stuff like that. And with this movie and it it's kind of jarring sometimes because it's like Western actors saying Korean stuff, like
Mm-hmm.
kind of weird. And it reminded me of, maybe it's an Asian thing, but it reminded me of anime, like especially the Korean engineer, the way he acted and how he would just be like so cool with his cigarettes, and then he would just he Chris Evans puts him up against the stuff, and he just takes the key, the right key, puts it in the slot, unlocks it. It's his daughter comes out, you know. But it's a maybe it's an Asian thing where it's just like or a Japanese and Korean thing where it's just like it's just cool, and then everything else is just very melodramatic. Everything's over the top, everything's overdone, which is
It's
funny
like Bullet
because
Train. You know how like Bullet Train's like over the top?
yeah, yeah, but this was in a more dramatic sense, you know what
Yeah,
I'm
not
saying?
comedic. Like, oh damn.
And that was made by David Leitch, one of the directors of the John Wick movie, the original John Wick, the first one. And their stuff is based on Japanese, which is like that. And the original story of Bullet Train, the original movie, was a Japanese movie.
Yes.
So it's like, it's interesting to see that, especially because I was watching I just recently rewatched all the Rurouni Kenshin movies.
Chase.
There's five of them. So it's they're based off of an anime, which is based off a manga, and some of the stuff I'm like, some of the acting is like, but I understand it's a cultural thing, you know. But I think what's interesting is sometimes it happens in Snowpiercer, but when it's not supposed to be that way, when it's supposed to be straightforward, they excel at it. Like when like we just talked about, Curtis is talking to the Korean engineer, and he's just telling him his story about how he became one of the worst people in the world. And then the engineer talks to Curtis, and he's just like, "Look, we don't have to be here. The Earth and da da da." And what's interesting to me, and when I did research on this, I wanted him to go in more because the information they don't tell you in this movie, the last revolt that happened was led by his wife and the
Mm-hmm.
mother of Yona. And you see them in the movie, those seven um revolters
Yep.
are frozen when the class is like, look at them, that's them. And the Korean guy talks about how the person in the front is an Eskimo woman, an Inuit woman, and he talks about how she taught him a lot of things. That was hinting at that was his wife, that was her mother, and I thought it was interesting that her Yona at the end of the movie is dressed like an Eskimo and goes out into the world and sees a polar bear. I thought that was funny that her mother wasn't an Inuit. He calls her an Eskimo in the movie, and she ends up looking like an Eskimo at the end, kind of full circle. But
Right. Right.
yeah, those that scene was straightforward. I feel like even though it was kind of like Ed Harris was talking like matter of factly about all this stuff happening, that was a straightforward scene. I felt like the melodramatics were where they were supposed to be, and the straightforward acting was where it was supposed to be, and it kind of married
100%.
together.
Everything was meant to be. It wasn't because of poor acting or execution or anything like that. Like that was purposeful. It wasn't like The Happening where I'm like, oh, where'd you get that from? You
And
know?
man, I just gotta say that tunnel scene is amazing. Remember when they go through the tunnel and the build up to it? They're just all standing there. The guys put on the night vision goggles, and you and the viewers know what those are. We've seen those before in video games and movies, but they never seen anything like that. The people in the tail, because I was like, at first I was like, why aren't they? Duh, like they're putting on night vision goggles. I'm like, oh, they don't know what those are. And then he's like, and then she's like, oh, there's a tunnel coming up. You guys are dead. And then they just run. Yona and her dad just run, and then they go through the tunnel, and it's just a beautiful scene through a POV of the night vision, and it's always a POV of the camera's always a POV of somebody with night vision goggles, and then he's like, "Yo, we need fire," and then the scene gets even better. And I don't know if this is true, but I read that in that scene they only used fire for the fire that was shown on screen for the lighting. And I'm like,
Oh,
what? That's amazing.
how's
If that's true, that's amazing. Because not even Roger Deakins does stuff like that. He uses all LEDs and stuff. But that was an amazing scene. Like I could watch that over and over again. But I love that. And I remember in that scene where Curtis, Edgar's his name, Jamie Bell's character Edgar, his second in command, gets captured,
oh,
and
that's his
Curtis has
name,
to, yeah,
Edgar
Edgar,
Bell. Thank you, because I'm like, I know this guy. Who is this
Jamie
guy?
Bell, and Curtis has to decide whether to go after him or Tilda Swinton's character. He goes after Tilda Swinton, and I kind of feel I may be wrong, but I kind of feel like in an American movie, he would have went after Edgar, saved his
You're
friend,
right. Ugh.
and
And
then
then they
the
make
rest
it
of the
so much harder.
movie.
I'm like, no, go kill that hussy. Go get her.
I'm like, yeah, man, get her. And yes, your friend dies, your best friend dies, but it's for the good of the revolt because we got to get to the
How
last.
many people in the train died? I felt like everyone.
Pretty much everybody in the tail died. They said 74% had to die, and that's how much died in the end. Because spoiler alert, they figure out, and it's not even that the head of the train figured it out. They orchestrated the whole revolt.
Yeah,
So they knew what was happening. So they had the guy go back there with a bunch of guns and a bunch of people.
and
And
just
he's
shoot
like,
him.
how many did you want dead? He said 74. He said, you know what? Let 18 survive in honor of 18 years on the train. What? He's just talking about it like it's nothing, man. Like it's crazy, man. I don't know, man. But it's wild. I love this movie, man. I freaking love it, man. I
The
don't
ending's
go
kind
ahead.
of just abrupt.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the foreign aspect of it, but it was very abrupt. Like there wasn't any closure.
maybe it ended the way it is because it was like, oh, we can survive, so there's hope. We just end this movie by saying there's hope because they can survive.
Yeah.
And you know, if this was 100% American movie, there would have been a sequel soon after this. And it's like, oh, you want to know what happened to Yuna and the little kid? This is
Not
what
really.
happened. Like, and the movie would have been like, oh, 20 years ago, Yuna and such, and it would have been about the
Does
new
did the
society.
train pretty much get destroyed because of the explosive?
Yeah,
It
and
got
that's one
derailed,
thing I
right?
wanted to know is did some of those people survive? Because I'm like, some of them had to have survived because some of those train cars didn't get destroyed like the others did. It was a very long train, and some of them exploded, some of them survived on that cliff where they were. So I'm like, what happened to those other people? I know there was an explosion, but I mean, can they survive off some of the stuff on the train? Like, what's going to happen? You know, are they going to get killed by a polar bear and then humanity dies, or what? what
Right.
what happened? What happened to the people? Well, I think the people in the tail died too, because I think that's the part of the train that exploded. But the whole train didn't explode. Some of it
No,
survived.
I know because they only exploded near that nightclub area.
Yeah, so now it's like a free for all because there's no order. There's no front of the train, back of the train. It's just everybody's out in the open. So wonder what's gonna happen. But yeah, man, I mean, I love this movie. Everything was set up that was set up in the beginning was paid off in the end. Like it's a complete story. Cinematography was great, the acting was great, the directing was great. You know, we need more films like this. And
I
sometimes
agree.
sometimes another thing that makes this film great is that it's the only one.
Yes,
It's a
I
complete
agree.
story with a beginning and an ending. It didn't get franchised. It didn't get
Well,
a
till now.
trilogy. Actually, you're right. Until now, until they made the TNT show. But for the most part,
But that's 10 years after the fact of this
yeah,
movie being made.
yeah, yeah. So it's just like a one-off story, a one-off great story. Finished it, did something else. I thought it was great. I loved it, and it didn't really hit the scene. Like it didn't really blow off the box office when it
Mm-mm.
came out. It was just like a sleeper hit, like Captive State,
It's
like
funny because I have other friends in the film industry, right?
mm,
They told me they would always talk about Snowpiercer. This was like several years ago, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Snowpiercer." I'm like, "Snowpiercer, what the heck?" So I just randomly watched it. I'm like, okay, I see why you guys talk about it because they're part of the indie film scene too, right?" So
mm, yes,
this is pretty
great
much
film.
the epitome of epiphany. Jesus, the epitome of what you do.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, it's great, man. I freaking love it, and I hope Bong Joon Ho has more to come. His
Bong,
last big thing was
Parasite,
Parasite.
Bong. I want Bong.
Bong.
Yo, Bong better be showing up. All right, let's see what has he got in his repertoire. Let's go look. Bong June. Oh, he's not that old. He's only 54.
I mean, it says two things coming up.
All right, let's take a look.
His latest thing is the Snowpiercer TV series,
So he
premiered in
doesn't do a whole
2020.
lot.
Ah, I feel like good storytellers like him. No offense to anybody out there, but a lot of good storytellers like that don't make that much stuff. They don't go back to back. They kind of just let things breathe. You know.
I agree. Have you ever seen his other stuff?
I think I've seen Mother, but I didn't see Okja. It didn't really. The trailer didn't really
Dude,
interest.
look at his time difference of his projects. There's years apart from them.
Yeah, uh, he just likes to develop stuff, and he writes a lot of stuff. He just likes to
All
develop
right.
stuff and then make it.
Before we wrap up, I wanted your opinion on this.
Mhm.
Christopher Nolan, James Bond. What's your thoughts?
Get ready for the most confusing James Bond you've ever seen, my friend.
It'll be good though.
It's going to be good, but the timeline's going to be all over the place.
Yeah, but the thing is, James Bond's based on books, so he's got to pick a book and he's got to roll with it.
Yeah. I mean, the problem with the last. I feel like there's only two good Daniel Craig James Bonds, right? Casino Royale and Skyfall. Everything else kind of went off the rails, especially with
Quantum
the last one.
Solace was,
Quantum Solace suffered because of the writer's strike.
dude, Spectre.
Didn't do it, bro. Didn't do it. The problem with Spectre was, what's his name
The villain
again?
was great. What about the most recent one? The most recent one was good,
It was alright, man.
dude.
They
I
didn't.
think it worked out well.
I feel like they shortchanged James Bond in order to, um,
They wanted to end the Daniel Craig's thing in a nice, neat
it
bow.
was nice. I feel like there wasn't enough Bond in that one. I feel like there was a lot of his strong female characters in there, you
That's
know.
true. I agree.
But I felt like he didn't get enough screen time for me for it to be
So
the final James Bond, for it to be
Christopher
a
Nolan's
personal
next
story.
project right now is the remake of Memento.
Why? The only reason I say why is because Memento is great already. Why would you redo that? Guy
Bro,
Pearce killed that.
I hope he's in the new one.
Why would you remake that? Like it's unless it's like unless it's going the Snowpiercer route where it's remaking it into a TV show, but that would be the most confusing TV show
Dude,
ever.
Memento.
Because
Who did the
Memento,
original Memento?
because if you watch Memento,
It was
it's
Christopher Nolan. He already did it. He's remaking it.
yeah, he shows Memento goes backwards, literally. The scenes of the movies is presented backwards. So if he goes the TV series route, that would be the most confusing TV series of all time. That would be like season 2 of Westworld. Like, dear God, because they tried to do that in Westworld, where it was kind of like everything was backwards and then everything was in the middle, and it was like I still don't know what happened in season 2 of Westworld. I it was all over the place, man.
So they remake this. I mean, his brother's writing it too.
Oh,
Um,
okay, good news. Good news then. I mean, his brother.
his
That's
brother
odd to
wrote the
me.
first one.
That's odd to me though, because his brother worked the first one too. So it's like, why are you remaking it with all the same people? That makes no sense to me. I don't get it. And it's not like it was a bad movie. Everybody likes Memento.
So this movie's just backwards. It's going from the end to the beginning.
Have you ever seen it?
I've never seen it.
Dude, you have to watch this movie. It's a good movie. It's just everything is backwards. And it makes sense when you see the end, but everything is backwards. And I'm like, why would you remake that? Memento is like a shot in a lightning in a bottle.
All right, I even see it like I don't know, like I'm getting like mind jarred right now, like watching the trailers, like if it, I'm like I'm trying to put it. Okay, I see it. All right, yeah, I'm gonna watch it. I'll tell you what you think because this is definitely stellar. I love Guy Pearce, man.
But I'm like, why are you remaking this with the same people? It doesn't make sense.
I don't know. I'll watch it and I'll give you my 10 cents on it. However, you know,
That's like Michael Mann who kept remaking Heat for whatever
oh,
reason.
bro, but Heat
Heat
is
was
so
a
good.
great movie, and he just kept remaking Heat for whatever reason. I don't know why. He made it into a TV movie. He made it into another movie with different titles. I'm like, why are you doing that? Heat was great.
I got an idea for us for our next movie. You ready?
What's up?
Kingdom of Heaven.
Shut up. I like that movie, and I keep telling myself every day I have to buy the director's cut.
I have
And
that. That's one of the few movies I actually own.
I own that movie, but I own the theatrical version, and I've always wanted to watch the director's cut, and I never got to it
Dude,
yet.
underrated Orlando Bloom. He should have won something for it.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like Orlando
Plus
Bloom.
Eva Green's in there first. I love.
Orlando
Mm.
Bloom was
And it was one of like
um
Ridley Scott's movies that's just never talked about with his great ones.
yeah, it's a great movie, and I feel like he was a casualty of his own success because he got Lord of the Rings as soon as he
God.
graduated from film school,
Yeah.
from
Because he
acting
was
school or
21,
whatever.
22 when he did Lord of the Rings. He was very
Yeah, like
young.
he got the job from his professor, I believe, straight out of graduation. And then right after that, he did Pirates of the Caribbean. So he was in two huge franchises. And then after that, all his roles were compared to that one. And so like no one cared about his stuff. I mean, I did, but no one cared about that. Even there was so many times I would hear girls say, "I prefer him with blonde hair." Like, what?
Michael Sheen's in there too as the priest, which is fantastic. And it's one of Nikolai Coster-Waldau's first movie, like things that got him on the scene. If anyone doesn't know who he is, he's the one who plays Jamie Lannister in Thrones. Oh, Troy's a good one too. Who did Troy? Who was the director of Troy? Let's see. Wolfgang Peterson. Yes. Oh yeah, it was David Benioff who did the it's funny, they quote Homer for Troy is like, well, no doubt he wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey. Like, like seriously. Yeah, but David Benioff, doesn't he did Game of Thrones, right? Okay. You know what he needs to do? He should do the new Star Wars stuff. Write it. Come on. Let's all right. Okay. Forget his name. But they ended up doing the Amazon stuff instead. They wrote the X-Men Origins Wolverine. They also wrote It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. What? What? 25th hour. I love that. Oh, dude, he did no, you're right, 100%. He did Brothers as well. I love that movie. Tobey Maguire and Jake Gyllenhaal, Natalie Portman. Man, you want a movie that makes you sad? Well, just a shorter. Tobey Maguire is a POW. Natalie, he's his wife's Natalie Portman. He gets captured. They assume he's dead. So Jake Gyllenhaal and Natalie Portman hook up. He comes back and found in a hole in Afghanistan, and he's all the way messed up, right, for obvious reasons. And then she leaves him for Jake Gyllenhaal. I'm like, oh man, you want to talk about like a movie that's messed up? I'm like, dude, there are 3 billion women on this planet. You couldn't pick one that wasn't associated with me. Like, come on, man. You know, but I Stay too. He did Stay the Gemini Man. Okay. 25th hour. I already know that. Oh, last season. Or we should do Moon. We should do the movie Moon with Sam Rockwell. Dude, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind is one of my favorite movies of all time. with Sam Rockwell. Moon. All right, so we either do King of Heaven or Moon. Which one? Dread. Oh yeah, I've seen Dread. Yeah, I know that. Yeah, he's like the space. He's like the robot cop. Yeah. Well, you know what I mean. He looks like the. He looks like the robot cop. He looks like a robot. All right, so don't upset. Don't get me. All right, let's do Moon. I think Moon's the right one to go. Kevin Spacey's in it. Let's go. 100%.